Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community around the world. And following the theme of this week's upcoming podcast about rising hate crime against the community, particularly against women, the problem has even caught the attention of the international fashion magazine Vogue. We'll take a look at their perspective on the issue. We have the latest update on Jagtar Singh Johal, and to dismiss the doom and gloom on this cold winter's day, we have the lovely story of the discovery of a fabulous 17th century handwritten copy of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji in Scotland, written in ink infused with gold of all things. So all that and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Welcome back for another episode, and don't forget to stick around to the end where you'll be able to watch all of your comments that made it to the grade today. Also, don't forget, folks, that we always encourage you to add to the comment section, whether it's just saying hello and letting us know where you're watching from, or whether it's an in-depth, well-thought-out comment. By all means, we love them all, so keep them coming. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed we do, and in the meantime, James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, indeed, we will take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, a lot to get through. Again, as always, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, I'll turn the ringer off my phone. I forgot to do that, and that's not good to have that going in the background. And as we continue, though, talk about not good, well, the information coming out from the attempted assassination plot for Mr. Panun, as well as the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, has made what I call the big times. That is the New Yorker magazine celebrating 100 years this year, and they are featuring an in-depth story that covers the Hardeep Singh Nijjar murder, as well as the assassination attempt on Mr. Panun. In addition, they have created a narrative in there that actually is very in line with what we would expect from the New Yorker. It is a well thought out, well articulated article, while it also brought in the fact that Mr. Nijjar was killed on Father's Day and brought the family emotion into the article in the fact that his son was one of the first to get to the Gurdwara after the events took place. So it really touches on the emotion, but it brings a lot of truth and reality to their international audience. And that is a big thing, because the New Yorker over the last 100 years has really built itself up to be one of the most respected and most well-read magazines in the world. They, as I said, are celebrating 100 years, and what a great way for this to get traction in terms of more widening of the awareness of the problems that are coming out of India when it comes to transnational repression, foreign interference, and of course the death squads that the Modi government is responsible for. So I encourage you all to get a copy of the New Yorker, or just go online to newyorker.com and check it out. The article is excellent. It brings a lot of light to it, but it also adds that emotional touch to the article that I was really impressed with, and how they are capturing an audience to understand the reality. And this is huge for raising further awareness of the problem of India when it comes to their foreign interference, their transnational repression, and their human rights abuses at home, while also shedding a light for North America, where the risk continues, not only for the Sikh diaspora, but others as well. So yeah, take a read of that. I really encourage it. It is a very well done article. Now, as we move on, Delhi, the air quality index has hit another record high. People are walking around with face masks on, but again, those who suffer from pre-existing conditions such as asthma, COPD, or other areas are really concerned right now, because this is a very toxic haze that is really just lingering, and you can feel your breath as you're breathing in. You can feel it coating your throat and your lungs, according to some people there. Now, the worst area affected has an AQI of 477, and that is when you consider a reading of 269 being poor, you can tell how and why they're at a very extreme level warning. And it just goes to show that India, although they are looking to expand manufacturing and their industry, they are not doing enough to really deal with the environmental issues of this toxic smog that's just enveloping the whole country. Now, as we move on, Pakistan is saying that they can't rule out a war with India. They are also stating that that war may be fought on two fronts, not only against India, but against Afghanistan on the other border. They are describing Operation Sindoor as an 88-hour trailer. And for anybody not familiar with the term trailer, it's like a movie where it's just the little snippet to introduce the full movie. So is the Operation Sindoor just a glimpse into what's coming up soon between India, Afghanistan and Pakistan? Now, Pakistan, their military chiefs are saying that a lot of what they suspect coming through from the attacks that are coming from Afghanistan are being fueled by India. Whether there is truth to that, well, we don't know for sure, but it definitely is something that we could visualize India doing, to have Afghanistan fighting their proxy war, just as they do have, gang members around the world doing their proxy bidding when it comes to transnational repression. So again, it is something that they are warning that it could potentially become an all-out war, and something that we'll really keep our eyes on to see how that situation escalates, or hopefully de-escalates. And on the continuation of our series this week, I've been showing little clips of documentaries that I thought were very interesting, especially for our English-speaking audience, to learn more about what happened with 1984 and the Sikh genocide that took place in India. I also wanted to ensure that people understood the emotion and the personal impact it had on individuals who were there at the time. So tonight we're going to take a look at one called 84 Riots, Forgotten Chapter, and this one's from NDTV. And Angus and I refer to this station a fair amount because it is more of an Hindutva propaganda channel than anything, more along the Sikh lines of the road. So I thought that it was interesting to take a look at this perspective, because even they recognize how it was systematic, and that there was involvement from Congress members, law enforcement, and other government organizations to organize what was the Sikh genocide of 1984. So let's take a little peek at this one. And again, you can find this on YouTube as well, but I just really thought that it was of interest for our audience.
Young children, just born toddlers, saw their fathers and uncles murdered in front of them, often burned alive. Women were raped and killed. But almost 3 decades later, many can still hear the echoes of those tombs as if it was yesterday. Justice continues to elude them. In fact, according to one estimate, one Sikh was killed every minute on the streets of Delhi while those riots carried on. Riots alleged to have the involvement of Congress politicians and the police. Yet, despite so many eyewitnesses, only 30 people have been convicted. The real culprits we have got with.
Can you hear that okay, Angus?
Not so great, James. We do have subtitles, but the audio
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to turn that audio on here.
The area saw some of the worst cases of mob violence and killing that followed Indira Gandhi's assassination. Several commissions highlighted the violence, but it was only in 2005, after the CBI took over, that it found enough evidence to charge the then Congress Member of Parliament Sajjan Kumar and 5 others with murder and dacoity. The case is now in its final stages, but there are startling revelations on glaring lapses in investigations. The investigating officer Kumar Vashisht never visited the area or recorded statements of the witnesses. During the entire period of my investigation, I never visited Rajnagar. Accordingly, since I never visited that area, I did not record any statement of any witness. Well, here in Rajnagar, Palan, it's tough to actually locate an address. But eyewitnesses clearly say that the mobs that attacked were anything but sporadic. In fact, they were highly organized. Many of them possessed lists of exactly where the Sikhs lived.
Our house next door was Hindu people who were great fans of us.
For someone who survived the nightmare, Mrs. Singh shudders as she recollects what happened.
We saw that incident of that man being burnt. I saw the tie around his neck and fired in and screaming. And these police vehicles were moving up and down. Why couldn't they stop? The apathy, the indifference. Their leader was a political leader because he carried a lot of clout. There were no urchins, surprisingly. There were no urchins. I could see the person who was leading the mob. We had seen on Doordarshan and we had seen on, he was a local big shot. So a mob started gathering, they had those iron rods and lathis and whatnot. They started breaking all the window panes and whatever. Started torching our house also. और हम अपनी गली में भाग रहे हैं and they are after us. Everything was haywire. I didn't know कौन कहाँ भागा. 2 row of houses के बीच में एक toilet था common था. जो नजर आया वहाँ पे जाके I just hid myself. I could hear the voices of my brothers. छत पे भाग रहे थे उनके पीछे and my elder brother was crying. Uncle हमने आपका क्या बिगाड़ा? हमने आपका क्या बिगाड़ा? हमको क्यों मार रहे हैं? They were tossed, the 3 of them. I think tired down के साथ में एक और street थी. Even FIR उसके बाद FIR तक नहीं हो रहा था. They wanted money for it.
The Kapoor Bittal Committee of 1984 had identified 72 police officers for connivance or gross negligence, recommended that 30 of them be sacked, but no action was taken. Finally, in 2005, the CBI charged Sajil Kumar and 5 others. And as the case nears completion, a lot of families are watching the outcome. In New Delhi, Siddharth Pandey for NDTV.
Well, let's now go from someone who's been fighting for justice for these victims. Who else but H.S. Kulkar, a lawyer for victims. Thanks again, sir, for speaking to us. Great to have you on the program, sir. It's been 28 years now, sir, and we've seen half a dozen committees and...
So as you can see, it is, you can see that entire...
Yes,
oh.
we talk about...
There we go. You can see that entire... it's about 9-minute documentary there. It's a documentary short, but it really shows the visuals of the terrifying incidents that were going on as they burnt buses. They chased people down the streets. And believe me, they didn't just chase them. They caught them. They tortured them in the middle of the streets right there in public and murdered people, raped them in the streets. I mean, the horrific acts of 1984 can never be forgotten. And to look at this video, it was approximately 14 years ago that this video came out, and yet here we are in 2025 still waiting for people to be held accountable. The accountability within the justice system and within government has been so slow moving that, again, we recognize this all the time, that it is likely that very few others are going to be held accountable, in addition to the numbers that are quite small that have been held accountable so far. Now, I should also bring up that a lot of those who were accountable through the court systems that have been charged over the years, a good number of them have been lower level individuals. They weren't the Congress people or other people of high position who were involved in inciting the genocide and encouraging it and empowering it. So again, it seems that the most guilty and the most responsible for the genocide have still escaped justice to this day. And once, as Angus and I always say once again, is that we need international pressure on the government of India before it's too late, because let's face it, we are now in 2025, and a lot of those people are getting older in age. When you look at air quality and health issues in India, of course, the time or the clock is ticking when it comes to the opportunity to actually prosecute and to incarcerate those involved for the reprehensible actions that took place, Angus.
Yes, I mean, we've often talked about the details, the horrific details of that genocide. It's interesting seeing that video, actually, because it is, as you say, it's slightly old now. But of course, the details never change. But I was particularly interested in the perspective of that video. We often talk about the Govt media, and certainly if this video was a recent one, yeah, it very much would be very relevant. Sort of the Govt media, how they portray events like this. At least, I mean, the good thing is at least they've admitted, India as a whole, should we say, has admitted some sort of level of guilt over this terrible situation, this terrible event. But what I did pick out there particularly, of course, there's no word of genocide. The term genocide doesn't feature in this report, unsurprisingly. And this is actually despite the fact that I believe maybe the Supreme Court, but certainly a court in India, has officially recognised the events of November 1984 as a genocide. So it has legally been recognised in India already as a genocide, yet the media will still not, they still won't use that word, clearly, again, under the control of the ruling elite of India. But what I did notice also, but they are actually quite, there's a political element here where the Congress party get named several times, even in that brief snippet. There's a definite political football being used here where it's the Congress party were at fault. Now, of course, the Congress party were at fault, and it was certainly there was a very deep political element behind this, ultimately controlled and steered by, again, the Brahmanical elite of India. They were the ones behind the whole whipping up the whole thing through that sort of cascading hierarchy through the politicians and then down to the mobs on the streets. It was orchestrated from on high. This wasn't just a sudden impulsive gathering of people in the streets. It was actually orchestrated by politicians and in turn by people higher up, thinking, right, this is our opportunity to really get back at the Sikh community. So it is interesting then that the Congress party was specifically named in that report. So again, they're trying to sort of lay the full blame on the Congress party. But as I've said in the past, of course, the present day Congress party with Rahul Gandhi is the official opposition in India. And the Gandhi dynasty have an awful lot to answer for on behalf of the Sikh community. Of course, all the way back to 1947, Mahatma Gandhi and the events of the whole betrayal of partition and what followed when India became a republic. Then, of course, all the way through to Indira Gandhi, Operation Blue Star, which preceded this event and ultimately which led to her own assassination and revenge of that. So the Gandhi dynasty as a whole has an awful lot really, as I say, to answer for on behalf of the Sikh community. And I've said this before, if Rahul Gandhi wanted to actually make amends, we're never going to see justice. We know that. We practically and pragmatically acknowledge we're never going to really see genuine justice for those who were genuinely behind this. But what would actually help start to heal those wounds, now, of course, we will never forget, but what might lead to healing those wounds is an apology from Rahul Gandhi on behalf of his family, his dynasty that have had such a high-profile role in Indian politics for decades and generations. So even if Rahul Gandhi actually had the courage to stand up and apologise on behalf of his forefathers and foremothers as well, that would be a huge step. As I say, I'm not holding my breath, but he's actually been quite outspoken in recent years, obviously against the BJP government and Narendra Modi. But he has actually called out the oppression of minorities. He actually has publicly stood up to the oppression against the Sikh community. And I think it's certainly in high-profile occasions like that when he made a speech in the United States, it was a couple of years ago now, where again he actually specifically said the oppression of the Sikh community, the removals of articles of faith, things like that. He stood up and he made this public outcry about it. Well, at the time I said, well, okay, well, if you really genuinely feel that, why not apologise for the genocide, for the genocides and Operation Blue Star and all the preceding events, etc., etc. As I say, I'm not holding my breath. But anyway, we'll see. Time will tell. Just to wind back through your stories, James, the Pakistan story, just to comment on that one. Interesting that, the tension's still very much existent between India and Pakistan. Operation Sindoor was de-escalated very rapidly, and the credit actually was given to Donald Trump and his diplomatic team behind the scenes. But ultimately, that has not gone away. The tension is very much still there post Pahalgam, but it's post 1947. That tension has never gone away. It will never go away because ideologically, the ideological differences between India and Pakistan just will never change. And as we often say, the only solution to this is this buffer zone of Khalistan. This is, even from a global geopolitical perspective, the establishment of Khalistan will create the only permanent solution, the only solid solution to create peace in that region between these two nuclear armed powers. So I always argue about that whole positive idea of Khalistan for that one single reason alone, amongst many other reasons. But of course, interesting the reference to Afghanistan. We do know, and if you watch some of my past podcasts with Bhajan Singh Binder particularly, he's done an awful lot of research into the links between Afghanistan, the Soviet Union, the Indian government of Indira Gandhi particularly, is that we do know, and even in the past particularly, but also even today, there are strong links between the Taliban and the Islamic extremists in Afghanistan and the Indian state. And this goes back historically, but we do know behind the scenes that the Indian state have used the Taliban and Islamic extremists to foment trouble and problems for their enemy, Pakistan. So there is this tie between the Taliban and the Indian government. And so, of course, the intelligence agencies are fighting this sort of war beneath the surface that very rarely finds any public audience. You know, we do know there's an awful lot going on beneath the surface, and we do know that those intelligence services are fighting this battle. We've got the Pakistan intelligence service fighting RAW and the NIA, etc., of India, who again are working in cahoots with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so that whole maelstrom of trouble whipping up, and it's just periodically it just erupts into maybe the odd terrorist attack, the terrorist bombing, a quick sort of skirmish between Pakistan troops and some of these extremists that have incurred from Afghanistan, or likewise in Kashmir, where some of these extremists have gone into Kashmir, giving India again the excuse to bring in the troops, to impose presidential rule, all these sorts of things. So again, it's just a whipping pot. And as I said, the only solution to this is Khalistan, as we often come back to. And then a quick comment on the Delhi pollution. Again, every year we have to report about Delhi pollution. Another great reason for Khalistan, a lot of this pollution in the air pollution specifically, a lot of it comes from burning of the fields. It's from the agricultural fields, which is blown by the wind down across the huge conurbation of Delhi. Well, of course, if you establish Khalistan, it's all about management. It's all about agrarian management. It's managing the agricultural resources more carefully. And I have absolutely no doubt that once Khalistan is established, the agrarian economy won't just grow and explode. It will be better managed. It will be managed to prevent this sort of pollution, which is, we don't have time to get into the root cause of this, but ultimately it is burning of the fields, of the crops. And this is what's behind a lot of this pollution. Under Khalistan management, Khalistan government management, this will not happen. It will be a much better solution. It's better for Delhi. I always talk about what's in it for Delhi. Well, there you go. There's one immediate benefit. Is the pollution, it will potentially be a lot less and stop killing your own citizens. And that's even before we even start talking about the management of industry and the pollution of the rivers. Punjab, sadly, at the moment, is the cancer capital of India, as we often say, because industry is not being properly regulated and controlled by Delhi. It needs proper governance, it needs proper regulation, and that can only come in through a Khalistan government that will care about its population, about the cleanliness of its rivers, and these rivers turning black. Again, that will stop under Khalistan governance. And then finally, great to see this New York Magazine article referring to Hardeep Singh Johal. But again, I can't remember in my lifetime how often I've never seen so many mainstream articles, mainstream news outlets now talking about Sikh affairs. I mean, I go back years back. Maybe it's because I'm more involved in the community now. Maybe I'm just seeing them all. But I just genuinely cannot remember seeing so many Sikh issues hitting mainstream media. And I'm about to talk about one again in another Western mainstream media, talking about specifically Sikh issues. And this is great. And again, this is partly due to wonderful lobbying by Sikh organisations right across our Western democracies who are pushing these issues into the mainstream. But likewise, it's also India's misbehaviour. It's India's illegal terrorist activity that is creating this publicity, this bad publicity. It's bad PR for India. It's great PR for the Khalistan cause. It's great PR for the Sikh community, because people who know nothing about the Sikh community, who know nothing about India, are reading these articles. They're seeing these articles. They're saying, oh, really? I thought India was the land of spiritual gurus and peace. It turns out it's actually a terrorist state running out of accountability, murdering our citizens on our soil. That's a very different perspective, James, and that's what's happening. That is why these mainstream articles are ultimately going to lead to the establishment of Khalistan, because all the legal frameworks being put into place, all the public perceptions being put into place, people are increasingly aligning with the whole concept of it, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And we can't forget that, there's so much going on in terms of the direct impact on the Western societies with the foreign interference and transnational repression, that I think that it's really being pushed out now, that it is impacting every Canadian, not just the Sikh diaspora. So I think that's had a role in it as well. And with that said, Angus, if I can get you to share the screen again, we should have a new slide up there. Oh, that's your British Vogue there.
That's me. I don't have your screen share, James, I don't think. Oh, there we go.
Okay, no worries.
There we are.
There it is. There we go. Don't forget, folks, I just wanted to remind everybody, as this is our end of the week show, so make sure that you get out to Ottawa this weekend on the 23rd. That is Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Billings Estate National Historic Site. That is where the Khalistan referendum will be in Ottawa. So get out, have your voice heard. And don't forget to share some photos and videos with us, because we cannot be there in person, but we would love to see what you're visualizing or what you're seeing and experiencing there. Let us know, because it is huge to see it in the nation's capital this weekend. And before we move on to Angus's story, I also want to invite anybody that's actually in the Lethbridge, Alberta area. I will be there for the Lethbridge Fashion Weekend this weekend. So if you are in attendance, come on up and say hello. Come on up and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you. And again, that's in Lethbridge this weekend for Fashion Weekend. We'll see you there if you are in the area. Back to you, Angus.
Fantastic. And good luck this weekend at the Khalistan referendum. Don't forget your flags. Keep it peaceful. Keep it happy, as it always is. Make sure it's a good turnout. If you're in that region, make sure you get there, cast your vote. And we all know what it's all about, and we all know it's going to end in a happy ending, as they say. Now, talking about fashion, James, I'm going to talk about my first story, and the international fashion magazine Vogue, of all things, and this again, we talk about how mainstream Sikh issues, or the big issues in the Sikh community, are hitting the mainstream media. Of all outlets, Vogue magazine, yes, it's known for its high fashion, its haute couture, and of course more issues tending to be affecting the female side of our demographic. And interestingly, just yesterday or a couple of days ago, this article appeared, and I'm quite astonished that again how a story that's so relevant to the Sikh community, but most normal people outside the community would not even be aware of it. But again, this article focuses on a very, very pertinent issue that is, of course, a day-to-day problem for the Sikh community. That is, of course, the rising hate crime. This feeling of being persecuted and under threat that's happening not just here in the UK but right across the diaspora. And we've talked a lot about the potential root cause of this. Anyway, so this article has appeared in Vogue magazine, and it gives you it's quite depressing reading in many ways, because it's actually giving you a flavour of what it's like to be a Sikh woman in today's society. And I'll refer people, watch my podcast that will be uploaded tomorrow morning with Deeper Singh of Sikh Youth UK. And his organisation has been campaigning massively and really effectively in recent months about this very issue, about this rising hate crime, about protecting the Sikh community, and particularly its women, who, of course, are under threat. And I'm just going to quickly just pick out a few pieces in this article, because it just gives you a flavour of what Sikhs, and particularly Sikh women, are having to endure on a daily basis today. It just gives you a flavour of many of us, James, we take our lives for granted. We can walk around our streets, really generally speaking, without fear, without having to look over our shoulder. It's a very different story for Sikhs, and particularly Sikh women. Anyway, this article says, and it interviews various women in the community, and they give an idea, a taste, a flavour of what it's like just living their day-to-day lives and how it's changed. It says, this lady, the first lady interviewed, says, I can't do my usual run on the canal. It's too dangerous now. So this lady goes out running every day. Suddenly she's had to change her running routines. Again, this is a direct impact on her life. This is, of course, down to a recent spate of religiously aggravated attacks on Sikh women in the area. And this is particularly in the Midlands here in the UK, which is one of our largest diaspora communities. And it's left, this lady says, my parents worried for the safety of me and my sisters. I've stopped going out alone after dark. No more evening walks. I choose busier routes when doing the food shop. I take taxis to the train station rather than walking. My runs before work have been cut down by 3 kilometres due to the late start. I worry about my mum. She's, of course, a devout Sikh, as we say here in the UK, visibly so because of her patka. Of course, these very visible articles of faith which make the Sikh community particular easy targets. She no longer walks anywhere if she can help it, opting to take the bus instead. Fear is making us change how we live. And that's a key phrase here. Is the Sikh community are having to literally change how they live out of fear. It's horrific. This is the new normal for Sikh women in the West Midlands. And like I say, it's not just the West Midlands here in the UK, it's right across the diaspora now. Having to live a life on high alert, only venturing out in pairs or groups, completely altering daily routines while others are taking self-defence classes or carrying rape alarms. And again, in the podcast, you'll hear more details about the actual practicalities that the community are having to take in that respect. And of course, the article then refers to these recent, very high-profile attacks, the 2 dreadful rapes of 2 Kaurs by right-wing thugs, right-wing criminals, and of course that assault on the taxi drivers in the West Midlands. Right. And the article then continues to say, Sikh women are feeling targeted in a way that they've never felt before. And of course, this very much is about, of course, Sikh men are targeted by general hate crime and violence and harassment, but particularly women are very vulnerable in our society for obvious reasons. The West Midlands is home to the largest Sikh Punjabi population in the UK. The racially aggravated rapes have shaken the community, unsurprisingly. But within the South Asian communities, the shame and stigma attached to sexual violence makes the aftermath even more emotionally and mentally challenging. So it's not just the attack themselves, it's the whole social stigma of being the victim of a sexual assault, which in itself is tragic and a really sad indictment of our society. Sikh Women's Aid is one of the charitable organisations, has been contacted by hundreds of women since the attacks. Women are doing fewer things alone. Many described constantly looking over their shoulder. And then another lady says, my dad, who's happily lived in this country for decades, is now constantly calling to check if we really need to leave the house. I worry about my 14-year-old son. He wears his dastar with pride. He can defend himself physically, but he doesn't fully understand racial abuse. So, of course, the young, the innocent, the children are being subject to these sorts of attacks. Older women speak about how these attacks are reminding them of far-right activity in Smethwick, again in the UK, in the 70s and 80s. We had a real peak of anti-ethnic hate crimes in the 1970s particularly. There were a lot of racial attacks. It was a terrible time. And people are now saying it feels like we're going back to these terrible times of the 1970s. And the article blames mainstreaming of far-right rhetoric by politicians, bad faith actors, and trickling down into real incidents on the street. So again, it's sort of blaming this whole sort of shift to the right, this anti-immigration, which in turn is having this symptom that's manifesting itself in hate crime, in far-right extremism, racism, etc., etc. And it says, as a result of this, local Sikh organisations and the Gurdwaras have been organising self-defence classes, safety briefings, vigils for the victims, even going to the extent of having to offer chaperones to assist women to walk home, so they don't have to walk home alone, handing out rape alarms to the female congregations, etc., etc. And again, I refer to my podcast for more details of what's happening there. And again, this is just a graphic that was shown up across social media. Thousands of personal alarms, safety awareness leaflets have been handed out in Sikh communities over the last 2 weeks by Sevadars, the selfless servants. And again, Sikh Youth UK have been very much at the forefront of handing out 20,000 rape alarms, just to give you an idea of how extensive this wonderful communal effort has been. So this article, James, I find it very sad and this is a real, as I say, it's a very sad indictment of our society here in the UK, is that Sikh women are now literally having to change their lives. They're thinking, do I really need to even leave the house? We should not live in a society where anybody in our society, whether you're a Sikh or a white girl or from any ethnicity or any religious background, you should not feel fear to leave your house. This is tragic, and I think this is a very sad indictment of our times, James.
Absolutely. And let's take it even a step further, Angus, in that it becomes domestic terror, because the whole point of a domestic terrorist is to influence the actions or the behavior of an entire group of people, whether that has to do with a religious group, whether that has to do with a political group, or just a mass population. And that there in itself basically dispels that these are isolated incidents and just non-important issues. This is a major, major issue when people have to change the patterns of their lives, when their lives are changed and not in a positive way. That is the definition of domestic terror, and it needs to be treated as such, because if you don't get a grip on this, then it's not going to stop just at the Sikh diaspora. They are going to go after other ethnic minorities, other religious minorities, and others in general, and that has to stop. We're seeing too much polarization, too much separation, division, and hatred being incited by different groups or individuals, and that's where we need to do better to educate tomorrow's generation, but at the same time, we need to correct this generation on what's going on. And I don't point that as a millennial, as a Gen X or whatever. I'm just saying anybody that's involved in this type of hatred or trying to educate people on hatred needs to stop.
Yeah, and I think the most appalling element of this whole story is it's women who are most vulnerable, who are most targeted by this, and it's just so cowardly, because of course women tend to be more vulnerable by virtue of their gender, and it's deeply cowardly to target women, and I'm actually struggling even for words. In just the horror, that just the sheer utter cowardliness of targeting women. If you've got an issue, anyway, let's move on, because I get quite angry about that whole sort of concept. But do watch my podcast. Interestingly, and I'd say women particularly being targeted in the podcast. Deep Singh, actually, we talk about the root cause of this. Of course, there's this whole immigration issue and uncontrolled immigration, which is one of the root causes. But one of the other root causes, particularly why women are being targeted, interesting, he said it is a backlash after the grooming gang scandal, that of course the Sikh community were very much at the forefront of highlighting that. It wasn't the police who uncovered it. It was the Sikh community who uncovered the grooming gang scandal against Sikh girls, particularly young Sikh girls and Sikh women who were targeted by this. And it was only when the white girls started being targeted that anybody actually started paying attention to it. Anyway, but so do watch that podcast if you want more details about that. Right, I'm going to move on now to this is a nice story, and it's nice on a cold winter's day. We've had our first fall of snow here in the UK actually today, so I say it's a horrible cold winter's day. So I came across this story, and it's a lovely story actually. This is in Scotland. Talking about cold, Scotland tends to be a lot colder than us here down south, and a lovely story where academics have found a copy of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, believed to date back to the 1700s, when they were looking through the archives at the University of Edinburgh. And so the BBC covered this story, and they say that the book was for the first time allowed to leave the university in 175 years, so that the local Sikh community could hold a special ceremony in their local temple in Leith. Leith is a suburb of Edinburgh. Now, the story about why this Guru Granth Sahib Ji was in this university in Edinburgh, it's a beautiful version of it. It's handwritten. There's a few details coming from the story which I'll talk about. But originally, its history. It originally was in the possession of Maharaja Karat Singh. Now, Maharaja Karat Singh is the eldest son of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, of course, back to the Sikh Empire. And he was a very short-term ruler. He succeeded Maharaja Ranjit Singh to rule the Sikh Empire. And it originally was in his hands. So again, the whole history of this is just, it almost brings goosebumps how important this document, this guru, this living guru is. And it was taken originally from the fort at Dulliwalla in India during its capture in 1848. So of course, sadly, and slightly embarrassed to say, it was the British who obviously took possession of this and then brought it back to the UK. And it was brought back to the university by Sir John Spencer Login, that's a strange name, who also brought back the Kohinoor diamond to Queen Victoria through the Reverend Michael John of Calcutta. Now, in the book, in the back of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, it says gold was used in the ink that it is written in. So again, it's written in with ink, infused with gold. So again, you sort of feel how significant this version is. The Holy Book arrived in a box covered in a special cloth scattered with rose petals at the Sheriff Bray Gurdwara. It was carried through the crowd who were waving Sikh and Scottish flags, while a bagpiper, the bagpipe's the national instrument of I was going to say instrument of torture. It's the national instrument of Scotland, and it was played outside the street. So again, you can sort of feel that how wonderful this ceremony must have been. And it was carried above head height as is tradition through the temple to the beat of a huge drum. A ceremonial whisk called the Chor Sahib was waved continuously by a volunteer over the Guru Granth Sahib Ji as a sign of reverence and respect. And you can see some of the pictures here from the BBC. And as it says, what made the copy so important was it was actually handwritten. Of course, it was very historic, the 1700s. And again, a huge turnout, unsurprising, from the local Sikh community. And a lady from Edinburgh University, from the archives, said she contacted the university's Sikh chaplain when they found this manuscript. Because, of course, they didn't know what it was, didn't really understand, well, we found this incredible book. What is it? What's it for? What does it stand for? And, of course, they realised it was a Sikh religious document. And they said, we better get in contact with our local Sikh community. So, yes, they got in touch with the local Sikh Gurdwara, who then provided advice and said and explained to them how significant this was. And as she said, she was able to explain to us these weren't just manuscripts, but they're, of course, living embodiments. It is the living guru that succeeded the 10th guru, etc. So very significant. But as I say there, James, a lovely story. How fantastic to find something so significant and handwritten as well.
And to look at it, Angus, to have at that time period ink infused with gold. I mean, today we have technology and all these methods of doing that. But back then, it was not very common to be able to get that ink. So it shows the significance and importance of what they were trying to do. And that was not only to document and to create this amazing work, I would say publication, but it's a work of art at that point. And the importance and significance is demonstrated by that hard work to get ink infused with gold at that era. And to look at it now that it's being shared with the community is also an amazing event. And I mean, I cannot even imagine how they felt to be in the presence of this historic and culturally significant piece of art, Angus. It's just as you said, it's a feel-good story. It's a happy story. And all too often we're talking about, different books of Sikhi that have been desecrated over the centuries. And to see this one survive and to be shared like that is inspiring. And
this story and the whole article actually doesn't talk about what happens next. There's no mention of what happens next. And of course, this Guru Granth Sahib Ji is it's priceless. It's priceless from any perspective, but more importantly, it's priceless from the Sikh community's perspective. This book should, in my opinion, I mean, I'm no expert in Sikh communal affairs and particularly religious affairs, but of course, this is the Holy Scriptures. This is the living Guru. It's handwritten. As I say, it's priceless. This needs to be. It shouldn't be held in a university archive. It should be out there in the community. It should be used for what its original purpose was for. It should be argued. Maybe it should be held in a Gurdwara or something. As I say, to me, it just seems it's fundamentally wrong to hide it away in an archive. Yes, it's priceless. It must be protected at all costs. But ultimately, who should be protecting it? Should it be a white university, or should it be in the community? Should it be protected by the community somewhere appropriate? I don't know. Maybe our audience has thoughts on that. But as I say, I'd be interested to know what happens next with this, because this, as I say, this should not be locked away in a university archive, never to be seen again. It's too valuable to the community for that.
And when there's a formation of a new nation, Angus, it's not unusual for nations to gift things to the new parliament. So imagine when Khalistan is formed, if the university was to gift that to be held in trust at the Parliament of Khalistan, that would be pretty amazing.
Absolutely, great point. I think that's a fantastic suggestion. But there you go. Then, if anybody's in Edinburgh, get in touch with the university and tell the university to start campaigning for Khalistan, because here you have the perfect first gift from the nation of Scotland on behalf of course, the United Kingdom, to gift this wonderful document, this wonderful manuscript to the nation of Khalistan. There you go. Great suggestion, James. And then I'm just going to quickly finish off with just an update on Jaggi, sad to sort of sink the mood back to more serious affairs. Of course, Jaggi is into his 9th year of imprisonment. The reports are coming through that his wedding ring was stolen by Indian authorities. There's loads of updates in terms of from a legal perspective, none of them good, but basically it's just copy and paste from what's happened over the last 8 years. His latest trial hearing has been adjourned immediately. The next one has been cancelled, etc., etc. It's same old. Once again, it's justice delayed. He's still without sentence, still without any formal legal progress here. It's just being delayed, postponed, adjourned, etc., etc. Basically, he's just being held in prison on behalf of the Indian state, deliberately to send a message, and it's absolutely outrageous. And what's more outrageous is the UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, and I said at the time when she was appointed, it's Yvette Cooper. She's completely ineffective, ineffectual, another pointless, useless politician who has very little or very few achievements to her name. You stick her as Foreign Secretary, she's going to achieve nothing. Well, surprise, surprise, she failed to raise the issue of Jaggi again in her latest meeting with Jai Shankar. Yes, she shook hands. There you go. There's a photo of her shaking hands with Jai Shankar. And did she raise the Jaggi issue? One of the most important issues, ironically, between our two nations. A British citizen imprisoned without charge, without sentence in India for nearly 9 years. Does she raise it? Does she heck? It's absolutely outrageous. And again, as a reporter, there's a couple of weeks ago, Jaggi's wife actually has made a public statement, and as indeed his brother has been in the media on a regular basis, just saying, why are we not doing about this? Why is our Foreign Secretary not raising this issue? Why is the British government not delivering? The Conservative government before it made lots of promises, didn't deliver. The current Labour government likewise has made loads of promises, hasn't just not delivered. They're not even raising it, James. This is what I find absolutely disgusting and appalling and shameful.
Absolutely. And when I look at it as an outsider being across the pond here, is that I look and I say, why would the UK not be standing up, or any other nation not standing up for the rights of their own citizens who have been arbitrarily and without justification held in prisons? It is just wrong, and it goes against the tenets of every fiber of a being to fight for the human rights and for the legal rights of their citizenry. And that is just on so many levels wrong, and why I think that the international community again needs to do more and fire off an email to the British Parliament and say, hey, you guys have a citizen. This is not just being looked at in your nation. The whole world is watching what's going on here and how you are failing your own citizen who you should be protecting at all costs.
Yeah, we have 11 Sikh MPs, members of Parliament here in the UK, in the government. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? It's your government. It's your boss. Why are you not hammering your boss's door down on a daily basis saying, we have one of our own people sitting in arbitrary detention in India? Why are you not even raising it? Yvette Cooper's door should have been kicked down by these 11 MPs saying, why aren't you doing anything about this? But they're not. Again, it's just, we often talk about betrayal. Well, it's just another betrayal of the community. Anyway, James, let's move on to our comments column. And as I say, loads of comments. As always, thank you to our wonderful, loyal audience who've been contributing massively, as always. And indeed, many newcomers to our comments column. So thank you particularly to the newcomers for your arrival, and welcome to our little family here in Perspective. And Sufty Muffins, in fact, one of our loyal and long-termers, Sufty Muffins, says, it's always the RSS behind every explosion. Well, I don't know if it's every explosion, but we do know, James, the RSS and its Hindutva minions Palestinians are certainly behind an awful lot of what we call the false flag operations, these behind the scenes operations, in cahoots with RAW, all the intelligence wings, etc. They're up to no good, James. We know it.
Absolutely. And I personally don't feel that the RSS is involved in the most recent accidental explosions, so they're called. But again, it is not unlike them because we've seen them involved so many times before, Angus.
And Gurpreet Kaur says, talks about the principles that we take for granted here in the West, in Western democracies: accountability, fair investigation, transparency. These don't exist in India, as you rightly say, Gurpreet. The only thing is Operation Sindoor 2.0, and this is actually, again, it's another sort of fear that India is brewing something. Post Pahalgam, of course, Operation Sindoor was that attack on Pakistan. Post Pahalgam, is India up to plotting another attack on Pakistan? Well, Pakistan is clearly living in fear of it, James.
Absolutely. And one thing I will say is that Pakistan is not going to sit back. They are not going to take it laying down, and they are preparing for it. And that is a sad state when a nation is on full alert. And that creates a tension not only within the military and government, but even in the citizens on the streets. Just your everyday citizens feel that stress and that anxiety. So again, just a horrific situation all the way around.
There's a lot of people in the community, and particularly in our commenters, fear that India is brewing up something nasty, either against the Sikh people or against Pakistan, but they're certainly up to something. And as I've often referred to, when authoritarian governments start to lose grip and lose control and lose popularity, not that they're usually that popular, but ironically the authoritarian regime in India is popular, they start to resort to more desperate tactics. They start to resort to violence, terrorism, terrorist attacks, etc., just to try and unite people behind them again. So again, this is probably why there is a fear that India is concocting something. Now, my favourite comment of the day goes to Amrit Singh. We played Justin Trudeau's famous speech that he made in Parliament accusing India of terrorist activity in front of the Indian embassy in London on the 15th of August. I wasn't aware of that. So well done, Amrit. Well done to our community here in the UK. Because, of course, we reported, James, yesterday how it was played in one of your protests in Canada. Well, it turns out we've been doing it here in England as well.
That's beautiful. I love it. As I said yesterday, I just got such a kick out of that. And I just thought it was so perfect in the peaceful protest to have that blaring, and to hear this as well. That's perfect. I love it.
And it has more powerful resonance here in the UK because, of course, the highlight is contrasting. Well, look, the Canadian Prime Minister called it out. Why aren't you calling out here in the UK? We've had one of our own members of the community probably murdered by India just a few days before Hardeep Singh Johal, in that whole context of transnational repression, and yet you as a government, the British government, have buried it. You're not even mentioning it, etc., etc. So again, it's wonderful that they've played this. They say, well, this is what Justin Trudeau said. What are you saying about it? So well done, Amrit Singh. Well done to the community for doing that. I should have been there with you alongside. KJB Singh. Oh yes, this is your neck of the woods. All about Carney, my favourite villain of the moment, Mark Carney. KJB Singh says, look, he needs to pay attention to what CSIS and RCMP are telling him. Look, of course, we contrast what Trudeau stood for. Trudeau wasn't afraid to stand up and call out India as a terrorist state. Why isn't Carney? Carney's policies of appeasement towards India amounts to surrendering Canada's sovereignty, all for less than an $8 billion a year trade deal, James. As KJB Singh warns, it'll have long-lasting effects on the safety and security of Canada.
Absolutely. And let's face it, I mean, Justin Trudeau broke protocol with standing up and calling out India in Parliament. It's not something that we've seen very often in Canada. It's not common for politicians to speak out on issues that are of CSIS or RCMP purview and under their dossier. So again, it is not surprising that Carney is more silent on it. But at the same time, given the rise and the increase of violence on our streets, whether it's the extortion issues, whether it is the transnational repression, all of these things, it really, I believe, is a pattern that Carney needs to follow in the leadership that Trudeau put forward to publicly call them out and shame them, to make sure that we've got their attention and that, they understand that we're not going to sit back and be silent. So I think that Carney needs to follow that leadership of Trudeau when it comes to that issue.
Indeed, and as I often remind people, is that Carney, he was parachuted into that position. He wasn't a politician in the past.
No.
It's suspicious in the fact that he was just parachuted into this huge position governing Canada. But he's, as I often remind people, he's a World Economic Forum stooge. He's a globalist. He doesn't represent the interests of Canada. He doesn't represent the interests particularly of the Sikh community. He just represents the globalist agenda. That's really what he's and as I say, the evidence is writ large here, and he's more interested in doing trade deals with India as part of the globalist agenda rather than actually looking after the human rights of his own citizens. That's certainly my opinion on that, James. So anyway, let's move on. Killer 3, thank you, Killer 3, who's quite a regular contributor and always a voice of a counter narrative, I would say. I would certainly say not a critic, but certainly a counter narrative. And I like Killer's comments because he always tries to bring us back down to earth and say, no, guys, you get a bit too carried away with this. And it's the same with his comment today. Well, say his, it might be her. Anyway, Killer 3 says, look, we've got to be honest. India and the world don't recognise the genocide as a genocide, and particularly after what we've seen in Israel, where Israel, what you believe was a genocide on behalf of Israel. Look, they're not the global community isn't calling it a genocide from Israel, so you've no chance of getting the Sikh genocide labelled or legally recognised as a genocide. And as you say, I don't even think within the Khalistan community that most Sikhs even see it as one. I don't know. I'm not a Sikh, but all I would say is that every Sikh I've ever talked to about it has referred to it as genocide. I've not found any counter narrative amongst the Sikh community, other than yourself, assuming you are in the Sikh community, who has not said it's a genocide. Everybody I know has referred to it as genocide. It seems to meet all the legal definitions of a genocide. Many US states now have legally recognised it at state level, and now hopefully soon at a whole nation level, the United States recognised as a genocide. So I don't know, James. It's a debate that will rumble on, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And, you look at the different NGOs as well as the United Nations who refer to it as a genocide more openly now than they have in the past. And of course, not every division or every department, but it is definitely moving towards that. And it has taken far too long to get it to that point. So absolutely, I understand the point that you're making. But as I say, I think the world is changing in the way that they view it, especially in light of the way that India continues to act on the global stage now.
Indeed. And as I said earlier in the show, is even a law court in India itself has actually recognised it legally as a genocide.
That's right.
So anyway, again, it's all about perceptions from Killer's perspective, but legally speaking, more and more state bodies are actually recognise it officially and legally as a genocide. So anyway, let's leave it at that. The final set starts us off. Here we go again. This is almost like our weekly reminder. User something or other says, look, very informative. Well, thank you for your comment, but could you please correct your subtitles? It's Sikh, not Sikh community. Well, again, James, we often as we have to say almost a weekly basis, we don't generate the subtitles. It is AI, it is YouTube that generates them, and it's down to how you pronounce Sikh, as North America does, or Sikh, as we pronounce it here in the UK. Sikh, yes, Sikh, as you'll see in the subtitles, if you watch the subtitles, is correct. Sikh. Well, look at the subtitles, James, but we don't generate it. We can't change it. We are not in control of the subtitles. So anyway, that's just to remind those who might not be aware of that. Love Deep says...
Absolutely, and even with the documentary clips that we've shown recently, they had the subtitles already there, but again, they are spelling the same issues that we have issues with. So hopefully as AI advances, they'll learn the correct understanding and spelling of it.
Indeed. And Feel the Love from Love Deep 2001. Thank you, both of you, with 4 love hearts. And yeah, we feel the love. We like to share the love. We do talk about some horrible, very serious subjects very often. And it's just nice to sort of try and share a bit of communal love and goodwill, James. It's nice that we get this back from our audience, but likewise we send it back to our audience.
That's right. We just tell them, come on into the screen, and just give them a big hug.
Indeed, I would say a big virtual hug from James and myself to our audience. Big collective family hug. And the final sign-offs for the day go to Surjit Kondal, Rajwinder Kaur and Gurpreet Kaur. Angus and James, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh, Khalistan Zindabad and Khalistan Zindabad. Are those 2 golf courses? I think they're golf tees. I'm not quite sure what relevance that's got, James, from Gurpreet.
I'm not sure what that is, but hey, we'll take it anyway. But yeah, absolutely. Khalistan Jindabad, as we say, it's a great way to end the show. And yeah, I'm not sure what we're looking at there.
Maybe it's in the hole in one. Maybe that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter. It's Khalistan's.
That probably is it. There we go. Yes.
So anyway, thank you, Gurpreet, for that. I'm still not familiar with emojis. They sort of passed me by at my age. Anyway, but that is it for another day. We must draw things to a close, and indeed for another week. Gosh, these weeks do go quickly. And don't forget to keep an eye out for the podcast being uploaded tomorrow with Deepa Singh of Sikh Youth UK. But that's it for another day, and indeed another week. Thanks so much. And do keep your comments coming in. We do appreciate them. We do appreciate all the comments. And thank you for all those who have emailed us at message@satlugetv.com about things that you'd like us to cover and talk about, etc. You can talk to James and I directly through the email system. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It's a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone. And reminder, I'll be in Lethbridge this weekend. If anybody wants to reach out and take me on a tour of the Lethbridge Gurdwara, I would love to take you up on that. So send an email.
Indeed. You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next week.